Art is a man who has worked incredibly hard to not be defined by the narratives that would describe him. He is widely acclaimed for his many awards in writing, and most recently authored a book entitled Zek, An American Prison Story. I had the privilege to read that book before it was published in a very cold, stark prison cell. I read that book in a night, and I'm convinced that someday this book will be regarded as one of the more important works on incarceration in America. Please join me in welcoming my friend, Arthur Longworth.
I met a girl when I was 15 who I still think about every day. We met in a state group home. Everyone knows what that is, right? A group home? For anyone who doesn't, it's simple. It's what it sounds like. It's a place where the state puts kids in a communal living environment. Kids who've been abused or abandoned, or whose parents are incarcerated. Usually kids that a caseworker, for whatever reason, is deemed too damaged to place in a foster home. Group homes are part of the foster care system. Although I'd argue that the term foster care is a mischaracterization of the experience. Group homes are inherently connected to incarceration. If you act out in one or run away, the state locks you up. Either the staff or police take you right down to juvie and throw you in a cell. Not for a short stretch either. Anyway, her name was Kate. And Kate was already in the group home when I got there. So she hit me to everything she thought I needed to know. You know, like which staff to watch out for and which rules we couldn't break. Kate was cool, which, you know, in state race terms means she'd been around. She was 17, and she'd been in group homes for 6 years. I could relate to that because even though I was younger, that particular group home was my 14th placement in 2 years. I think what I liked most about Kate was that she called me little brother from the outset, from the moment we first met. Which actually was a little ridiculous because I was a foot taller than her. Kate adopted me as family because, in case you don't know, that's what state girls without a family do in order to feel whole. If you don't know what that's like, you know, not to feel whole, it would only be because you don't know what it's like to lack the most basic element of human existence, a family. Anyway, a month before Kate turned 18, the group home director showed up and told her to pack her stuff. His name was Bruce. And Bruce prided himself on being able to handle any situation at the group home. He lifted weights. I remember he always used to roll up the sleeves of his t-shirt because he wanted you to know it. Bruce didn't explain anything to Kate. He didn't give her the chance to finish high school. She was in 10th grade. Because like the rest of us, she was held back. That's what happens when you're moved constantly or when you're thrown in juvie every time you run away. That group home didn't prepare Kate in any way for life outside. She didn't have any place to stay, no job, no money, nothing. You know, I'd been around long enough that this wasn't a surprise to me, nor was it even something I thought any of us could question. It's just the way the state raises you, right? And Kate, she handled it better than many boys I'd seen. She gave away her little clock radio and packed her clothes in a plastic garbage bag, because that's how you roll from place to place as a state kid. She had her state face on. You know, that blank slate of no expression you wear whenever you're moved around the state in order to project that you're not scared. But she was scared. She wanted to cry. I know, because I know her. I told her I'd go with her. I would have. But she said, no, not to worry, little brother. Somehow it was going to turn out okay. I was proud of her. In fact, I thought, when it's my time, when they come do this to me, I'm going to go just like that. Just like Kate. About a month after Kate left the group home, she called. And a staff member let me talk to her, which was lucky because the home actually had a policy against that. Kate told me she had a job and a place to stay. Talking with her filled me with hope, like this really good feeling that no matter how bad a situation, if you push forward unafraid and persevere, things will turn out okay. She gave me her address and told me to come live with her when it was my turn to age out. Well, my turn came 8 months later when I was 16 and just started in 8th grade. That's when the state booted me out. I spent a week under a freeway overpass in Seattle before I, figured out a way to get to the address Kate gave me. It was way over in Bremerton. I found her. She was living in a one-room apartment with 3 other people. She had her little corner of the apartment, curtained off with a bed sheet, hung from the ceiling. It wasn't even enough space for her to lie down. She was pregnant. I mean, really pregnant. And she felt the need to explain that to me. She said it was a guy in the Navy who'd promised to pay for an abortion, but he didn't. He shipped out and left her like that instead. She didn't have any food, so I went and shoplifted some. Yeah. I remember a pack of hot dogs was all I could get, but we ate. We talked for a while, and she asked me if I wasn't mad at the state. I wasn't sure how to respond to that. She pointed out that the state kicked us out with nothing. No money, no education, nothing. Then she said something that affected the way I saw the world, that affects the way I see it even to this day. She said, you don't do that to a person and expect they'll make it. Those words reflects my sister's sincere belief that the state intended for us not to make it. I left Kate that day angry. And I realize that may not make sense to you. I mean, if you weren't raised by the state. Why be angry, right? What good does it do? But you can't make sense of it with those questions. The anger I'm talking about doesn't come from logic. If people could feel the sense of worthlessness and hopelessness cultivated in a young person raised by the state, then they might begin to understand the problem. Why raising young people this way, then throwing them out into the street, makes them incompatible with society. What you experience in state care colors your perspective of the world. And I assure you, it makes it hard to respect the authority of a state that you feel not only irreparably harmed you, but whose actions you interpret as the intent that you not survive. Kate went to prison not all that long after I left her. And so did I. And I deserve to. I killed someone. Which I'm ashamed to admit isn't all that much of an anomaly for the community I come from. And I can't tell you how disappointed I am that after all these years in here, this story is still relevant. I know it is, because I know who comes in on the chain bus each week. And those of you who work in the criminal justice system, you know who's in the courtroom. The community I'm talking about for generations has been disproportionately represented in here. 78% of young people raised by the state end up in the criminal justice system. The overwhelming majority of them, by the way, commit their crime when they're young, when science tells us that their brains aren't yet even fully developed, and they're affected by trauma. They're disproportionately represented in a system that on its face is fair, right? We have fair laws and fair sentences, yet this happens. Why? And it isn't just the community I'm from. In case you didn't look around when you came in, believe me, there are some other communities overrepresented in here too. You know, I heard experts try to explain this by pointing out something they think is common sense and irrefutable. They say that the communities or kinds of people overrepresented in prison simply commit more crime, and often violent crime. You realize that's coded language, right? It's language that propagates the idea that something's inherently inferior or wrong with the people in those communities. I don't think that's the idea we should propagate as a society. It's harmful. When you're young and don't have access to a decent education or role model, you don't know how easy it is to come to believe that's true about yourself and your community. And it isn't true about anyone or any community. People are equal. Sometimes it's their experience that isn't. You know, neither is the relationship equal that the state has with certain communities. And if you inside your community never experienced the state as anything other than a beneficent social structure, be thankful. Just know that that isn't the case for every community. I'm not making an excuse for crime. You know, nothing I've said alleviates or detracts from personal responsibility. I'm pointing out that all of us, as individuals and communities, see the world through the lens of our experience. And if we want to uncover the real reasons why certain communities are overrepresented in here, then we need to work to recognize the ways the experience of overrepresented communities differs from the communities that aren't overrepresented. Yeah. I know that might sound complicated, but it isn't. It's not rocket science. And if we do it, then we might begin to understand why it's important to start funding our school districts equally. Because when we don't, a disproportion of young people from neglected districts ends up here. You know, why it's important to invest in mental health and substance abuse services. Because when we don't, the mentally ill and addicted end up here. And for the sake of my community, I'd like the people of our state to understand why it's important not to throw young people out onto the street when they don't have a family with nothing. Thank you.